Hi everyone, and welcome to the JetBrains Knowledge Day. Even though we had some technical difficulties with the global start, I'm sure that every one of you will learn something new today, and always, regardless of the profile, either you're a software engineer and want to learn more about JetBrains tools, or a competitive programmer and want to get better at that, or maybe you're visiting us from Codeforces, well, stay tuned. Today, we'll have tons of new information and interesting content. And we want to first of all congratulate and thank JetBrains for supporting ICPC for so long. JetBrains has always been a huge champion of ICPC, and we definitely know that JetBrains knows about all the best contestants in the world. And it's a great opportunity to actually work together for both industry and academia and ICPC and make sure that we get the best students of the world. Well, today you will learn a lot of useful stuff, pro tips from JetBrains developer advocates, prominent ICPC alumni, and they will get you all the best insights on how JetBrains tools, Kotlin can actually help you get better or even start your software engineering career. And we will start with a keynote from Roman Elizarov. And Roman Elizarov is a team lead at Kotlin language research team. And I can talk about Roman for virtually hours. He's a professional software developer with more than 15 years of experience. And he's really the person who knows it all, who can teach you how to get the best results given the tools and the knowledge that you have. Roman has been an ICPC alumni from 1995. He actually brought the ICPC competitions to Russia back then in 1996. And today, he is the chief judge for Northern Eurasia final contests, ICPC live director. He brings the live broadcast from the very world finals to your devices and computers. And Roman is a very skilled software engineer. He's been teaching for a really long time, and he knows how to actually get the knowledge that you need to get the best results. During Roman's undergraduate study, he's been studying at ITMO University, and he participated in back then ACM International Collegiate Programming Contest. But he figured that the programming competitions are actually a great opportunity to improve yourselves. And Roman will definitely talk about that in his talk. Also, an important part, Roman has been an avid enthusiast of Kotlin itself. And it is such a great opportunity for him to actually start a new programming language, to make sure that all the best practices.
That was the time when the whole word refactoring appeared in developers' vocabulary. And when I was taught to program as a kid, the way I was taught to program was this. They say to me, take your problem, carefully analyze it, split it into pieces, then carefully analyze each piece, write it down, implement it, and then create a larger piece out of it. So I was taught to do bottom-up, top-down analysis and bottom-up code writing, in which really tenuous process. Because first of all, it doesn't really scale because you have to keep in mind the whole problem. You keep in mind, and it's not really much fun. Because what I loved programming. I loved writing code. And there I was taught that I have to sit, think a lot first, then started writing. I really wanted to just sit down and write code. And it was necessary back then, because if I did not foresee the need for some parameter in my function, or I didn't foresee that this piece of code I would need to use several times, the cost of those mistakes was really high. It was, again, tenuous and error-prone to extract those pieces of code and create functions, etc. But not anymore. Nowadays, I just write code top-down. I write the code. If I see a piece of code that I want to reuse, just select it, introduce a function, and that's it. Give it a name. I don't have to think through 10 steps ahead of me. I'm not a chess player. I can't do this. I just give it some tentative name. Then later on, when I learn more about the problem I'm solving, when I already played with it, when I already wrote some tests, when I already see how it works, then I might figure out the better name for this function and I just go rename it. But it wasn't as easy when I started my first industrial projects. I clearly remember a time when we had relatively big project by that time. It was a few hundred files. And we had a method called close for some reason in our own classes, and UI framework we were using, and but also had method close. And it was at that time we was programming in I think it was Delphi, and it was a UI framework that for programming for Windows that it had. And so we decided to rename our own close method. I don't remember why or what was the alternative name we thought of, but I clearly remember that when I searched through our sources for the name close, it gave me hundreds of matches across dozens of files, and I have to open each one, take a look at the code, actually figure out what the code does, because the code base was already too big to keep all in my mind. Look at the code and see if that's right close function or I'm just closing some UI frame, and whether should I rename it or not. It was not fun at all. It's kind of work I never choose to do on my own, but I had to do it. But again, for me, it was all this close. 1 year I was doing all this manually, and boom, next year I have IDE that can do it for me. So it's not a big surprise that I was really early adopter of the modern IDEs that combine refactorings and etc. And JetBrains was a big leader in this space. JetBrains was one of the first IDEs to adopt deep understanding of the code and integrate lots of refactorings and helpful instruments that are based on the whole model of the code you're working with. So you can find usages, you can go to declarations, you can autocomplete your code based on the actual libraries and actual code you're writing. So for me, it all went natural. I've never had, on one side, I was never taught to use those tools. But on the other side, I'd never questioned their usefulness because I had my own personal experience of life without those tools, which is really hard to imagine nowadays. Which gets us actually to the next question of education. When people study programming nowadays, then most of the time they don't just study it abstractly or for hobbies. Lots of people study programming because it's a booming profession. There are around 20 million or so professional developers out there, and their numbers increase each year. Lots of people come in and they learn programming in order to become professional programmers. But in the modern world, professional programming means using a lot of tools. And the ideas of what we discussed about just one of those tools. There's way more. Programming languages are tools, and we use a lot of different programming languages nowadays. In interactive version source control systems, that's indispensable tool nowadays. When I was studying programming, all we did, we were just saving files to folders, and when we need to give different versions, we just name them 1, 2, 3, or if we didn't, we wrote our change logs in the beginning of files when edit what things and for what reason. It's not what they do nowadays. Nowadays, even if very large code base in million lines of code base, I can open any file, and if I don't understand what's code doing or why this function is there or why this check is here, I can just click annotate and see who edited. I can go to the issue, see what bug or feature was added, when the change was created, that gives lots of freedom, that enables us to work with large codebase we could not imagine working with just 20 years ago. And so for education, it's especially important to, first of all, it's important to teach. As a kid, she didn't master keyboard really well. So for her, context sensitive, things like context sensitive autocompletion work just great, because she can just start typing, and because the IDE knows, the context knows what she's expecting here, it usually immediately suggests the right word for her. Really helpful. That's one thing that tools are useful in education. It just lets people learn faster and save time. But the other things, it also prepares you to actual profession. It actually teaches you how to use the tools that you will be using day to day as a part of your profession. And when we start talking about education, let's jump the topic and talk a bit about International Collegiate Programming Contest. For those of you who don't know, International Collegiate Programming Contest is a sports programming event for university students that's been around for more than 40 years. It's the largest and most prestigious sports programming event that spans the whole globe. More than 100 countries are competing. I've been also, as a student, participating in ICPC, and again, it's all pure luck in my life. As a school kid, I've participated in International Olympiads in Informatics. That's competition for kids. And when I finished high school and went to study university, I thought that's it. That was like kids play. Now I'm seriously working at university, studying, no more competitions. It's just, courses, grades, coursework, etc., etc. Then culminating my diploma. And then, lo and behold, when I'm at first grade, our university gets a notice that there is this competition called ICPC, and they invite us to participate. And I could continue, doing competitions again, which is really fun because it all depends on what kind of person you are. But for many people, competitive settings adds additional motivation. Some people can just, go through grid and learn stuff because they have like further or long-term goals in their life. But other people, like myself, need a more short-term, need to see the short-term results of their work. And competition is a great place where you can compete with other people and immediately see how well you did. Do good or bad, what's a good size, what are bad size, what algorithms you do well and which ones you don't know yet and you need to learn. And year after year, International Collegiate Programming Contest, it attracts lots of students of computer science and software engineering around. There's actually hundreds, thousands of people competing, and it motivates them to study harder, to become better developers as the result of it. And JetBrains has been a big supporter of ICPC. JetBrains is tools sponsor for ICPC. But ICPC is about universities. But sports programming itself, solving those small problems, which is really similar to the way you learn programming at whenever you learn programming, usually do it by writing small problems. And sports programming is like the kind of an essence of it. You're given specification of what the problem for your program should do, and you have to write the code precisely up to this specification. It has to be fast, and you have to write it fast, and it has to work fast, and has to perform exactly how it's specified. So it's kind of the very essence of the programming itself, devoid of the rest of stuff you will have to do as a professional. But there is lots of this sports programming beyond universities. There are lots of online and offline events going around the world, even though in the modern world, because of the coronavirus epidemic, there are not that many annual competitions like that are hosted by companies like Google and Facebook and other big companies. They're all online only this year, which is sad. But the bright side, they're still going on, so people can still compete even though there's no community building around those on-site events anymore. And the largest actually online platform where people gather to compete in online competition is called Codeforces. And together with Codeforces, we at JetBrains do series of events called Kotlin Heroes. And let me invite you to the next event that's actually coming on November 12th. And this is a small competition. It lasts just 2.5 hours. In this competition is structured in this way that it has both really simple problems. For those of you who never tried sports programming before, you'll be able to solve those. They're really straightforward. And it also has really hard problems that will be challenging and fun for the seasoned sports programmers out there. And we also use it to promote Kotlin, to showcase Kotlin as a good tool for sports programming, because Kotlin as a language was designed to be concise, easy to learn, and to reduce the amount of boilerplate you have to write, which is really important for sports programming because you don't usually write a lot of code there. And any boilerplate you need to write really shows and obscures the logic of code that you're writing. And here, you can get rid with Kotlin of all this boilerplate to just concentrate on actually solving the problem that you have at hand, as opposed to writing like tenuous stuff around it. This is going to our 5th event, and it's called ICPC round because it coincides with the roughly coincides with the start of regional competitions that go around the world in international collegiate programming contests. So for those of you who participate in ICPC, there's a good chance to practice and solve some new and interesting problems. For those who don't, who just learn, or it's just a chance for you to have some fun and try programming in Kotlin. Which leads us actually to introduction to the first speaker of our event. That's going to be Mikhail Dvorkin. He's ICPC gold medal winner, and in his talk, he's going to show best practices for competitive Kotlin with Kotlin. He'll actually take one of the past Kotlin Heroes problems and will show how to program it in Kotlin. So if you've never done sports programming before, that's a great chance to actually see what it is. You'll see what are the problems, how they're solved, how the program. If you've never programmed in Kotlin, that's your great chance to see some Kotlin in action. And Kotlin is a modern, easy to learn language, so you will, just by watching this talk, you'll know a lot, and you'll not become professional in Kotlin, but definitely you'll already recognize lots of things that will give a big boost to your Kotlin knowledge. And even if you did both Kotlin and sports programming before, you'll surely learn some interesting practices from Mikhail, as he is really seasoned sports programming and experienced teacher on how to improve your coding skills with Kotlin. Now let's go to our next speaker. Our next talk is going to be about CLion, and Phil, who is developer advocate for JetBrains, will present you with some features that can help you speed up your coding. CLion is a C++ development environment. C++ is a very complex language, and it's actually a big engineering challenge to write the IDE for C++ itself, which is the whole another topic on how you would even write IDE that can understand C++ code and give helpful suggestions. And CLion is great at that. And Phil will show you how you can refactor your existing code in C++, how you can, we'll cover completions, smart completion, live templates, and generate all the tedious boilerplate you have to write in C++ and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm sure this will be helpful to many of the top tier sports programming who I hope might be watching this event, because C++ being low level and performance oriented language, which motto is that it has zero cost abstractions, is very popular for all the kinds of low level systems, and in sports programming especially popular in a top league where like the top athletes are in sports programming are competing. And CLion is a great tool for sports programming. I know many sports programmers use CLion to write their code, and again, if you already do use, you'll definitely learn some new tricks here. If you don't, come and see how CLion can help you. Our next talk going to be presented by Helen, who's also developer advocate at JetBrains, and she'll talk about IntelliJ. And IntelliJ is the flagship JetBrains IDE. It's actually an IDE for Java and Kotlin, and that's an IDE that's actually JetBrains started with. That's the IDE that my first exposure to JetBrains products was through IntelliJ idea back in the times. And Helen will show you powerful IDE features, how you can improve your code, your readability of your code with the help of IDE, how IDE can help you understand the code, especially really complex code. He'll teach you some helpful keyboard shortcuts and how you can customize the IDE for your needs. Please, welcome. Our next talk is going to be presented by Olga, who is developer of educational products. And educational programs is not something that people usually associate JetBrains with. It's relatively new direction. And this talk in particular will help both to people who learn programming and to educators, because JetBrains educational products are oriented around the learning process, how you present problems, how better create workflow for learning. If you are learning or teaching programming, please come to Olga's talk and see how JetBrains products can help you. And concluding today's event is going to be again talk about Kotlin. Ksenia, she's a Kotlin manager for education, will present a video where she interviewed several educators who choose Kotlin to teach people programming. And they share their personal preference, why they picked Kotlin over the other languages. And if you're an educator or a learner, you might find some interesting insights here of why you should consider using Kotlin for education. So that's all the talks you'll see today. I really hope you'll get some new interesting knowledge and insights from today's event. But most of all, I hope you'll have some fun and interesting experiences. Welcome.
So I hope that you're all inspired and excited about today's event. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Mikhail Dvorkin, the next speaker. And Roman introduced him as an ICPC 2007 World Finals gold medalist. But for me, Mikhail has always been a person who actually graduated from both of my alma maters and now continues working there. He graduated Alferos Physical Technical High School and ITMO University. So I really feel that Michael knows it all and has been really experienced in both problem solving and problem setting. Also, right now, Mikhail actually teaches programming at Physical Technical High School, so he can also give you an insight on all the useful educational tools within that part. But what is most important, he's actively participating in ICPC, all the problems that he sees on Codeforces using Kotlin and JetBrains tools. At Kotlin Heroes, but don't worry, there is always a problem for everyone. And I'm sure that not only you in Heroes official webpage, and obviously a Codeforces, because if you want to find interesting challenges in competitive programming, Codeforces is definitely a way to go. Okay, and at this point, I'm really happy to pass it on to Mikhail. Mikhail, take it away.
Hello, I'm Mikhail Dvorkin, ICPC 2007 gold medalist, and today, in order to show you some tricks and practices in using Kotlin for competitive programming, I will solve problem G, 2 IP cameras, from Kotlin Heroes episode 4. Here is the IntelliJ IDEA window with the educational plugin included, in which I opened the Kotlin Heroes episode 4 and problem G and its statement and the template for coding. Let me guide you briefly through the problem statement. There are 2 IP cameras that make photos periodically. That is, each camera has some moment of time where it starts and is making photos with a fixed period. The starting moments can be arbitrarily chosen by us, but the periods have to be from the set of the possible periods given to us in the input file. And the task is to select the starting moments and the periods for both cameras in such a way that all the moments of interest x1, x2, and so on, xn given to us in the input file are covered by at least one of the cameras. Or, of course, if there is no such configuration to fulfill all the interesting moments, then we should print to the output that this is impossible. I invite you, if you have the opportunity, to pause the video and to think about this problem by yourself. But now let's talk about the solution to this problem. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of possible periods for the cameras, so we cannot iterate over all the pairs of periods for camera 1 and camera 2. But the key idea is to try to narrow down this search by narrowing down the possible set of periods for one of the cameras. That is, consider moments of time number 0, 1, and 2. At least 2 of them should be covered by the same camera. So there is a camera that covers moments of time number, for example, 0 and 2, and therefore the period of this camera should be a divisor of the difference of these 2 moments of time. And since the number of divisors of such an integer is not so large, there is not a lot of periods that we are to iterate over. So we will consider moments of time with indexes 0, 1, and 2, select those 2 of them that are covered by the same camera, take the difference of these 2 moments of time, and only consider the periods for this camera that are divisors of this difference. For each period, we already have a lot of moments of time covered by this camera, and we need to make sure that all the uncovered moments of time are fulfilled by the other camera. So there are some uncovered moments of time, and we are to select the period that can cover all of them. Well, these uncovered moments of time should have the same remainder modulo the selected period. And even better to say this is that the differences of all the uncovered moments of time should be divisible by the selected period, which we'll be able to find in a quite fast time. This is the brief mathematical overview of the solution, and we'll see more specific details when we will be implementing the code in Kotlin. Let's start. I'm going to write the code from scratch, as if I have no pre-read work with arrays of strings. Let's rather work with array of integers. So I map them all to integers. Well, this looks like a very useful snippet of code. Let's extract it into a method that I will call readInts, so that I can reuse it in order to read the third line with the moments of time. Now, or no. It looks like it's a good opportunity to use nullable types here. So I will implement the solve function that I will call and where I will implement the entire solution. And from this solve function, I will receive the 4 numbers that I'm going to output, or null if there is no such 4 numbers. In case of null, let's print no and finish the main method. Otherwise, I have the 4 numbers received from the solve method, and I can output them in a neat way that is desired by the jury. Now let's implement the actual solution, the solve function, that takes 2 arrays, the possible periods and the moments of interest, and returns the list of 4 numbers, or null if we haven't found an answer, so it's a nullable type. I will now iterate over I and j, which are the 2 moments of time that were taken by the first camera. So out of moments of time number 0, 1, and 2, at least 2 are taken by the first camera, and I want to iterate over all such pairs of I and j. One of the possible code snippets would be to iterate over I, which is, for example, the smaller index, and then iterate over j, which is the larger of the 2 indices, so it's larger than I. It's possible, but let's try another one, the funny one. It's really easy to make a mistake in these intervals in the lower or upper bounds. So let me iterate over the other variable k, that is the one that is not I and not j. It's somewhere inside 0, 1, through 2, and then I and j are the numbers out of 0, 1, and 2 that are not k. I use multiple assignment here, and it's quite readable, I think. Now let's find the period for the first camera. It is among all the possible periods, and it is such a period that the moment number I and the moment number j have the same remainder modulo this period. So let's calculate the remainder of moment number I and moment number j, and if they have different remainders, then this current period is definitely not interesting for us, so it can continue to the next period. Otherwise, for this period of the first camera, we want to find a possible period for the second camera that covers all the uncovered moments. So let's find these uncovered moments. These are the moments of interest that are not covered by this first camera with this remainder. So these are the moments that have other remainder modular. We want to find whether there is a period for the second camera that allows us to cover all these uncovered moments. When some period is suitable, when all the differences between the neighbor elements in this array, if the greatest common divisor of all these differences divide by this period. So we can calculate this greatest common divisor of all the difference in linear time, and then when there will be no such differences. For example, if the amount of uncovered moments is either 1 or 0. Well, in this case, we are talking about the GCD of an empty set. And mathematically speaking, it's okay to define the GCD of an empty set to be 0. And we will be fine with this definition. So we can start with the initial value GCD equal to 0 and update it with all the differences, receiving new and new GCDs, including these differences. Uncovered moments, and I want to receive the array of all the differences between the neighbor elements of this array. This is the zip with next method, and I want to pass to it the function that will calculate the difference between the neighbor elements. But let's remember that this function is a build function minus, and having done that, I can simplify the syntax to zip with next using this minus function of the int type. And now with this array of the differences, I can make a fold function starting with the 0 and using each new difference to calculate the GCD of the previous result and this new difference. This will be a GCD function that I am yet to implement, and I can simplify this syntax in the same manner to receive the GCD of all the differences in one variable. And it will be 0 if there are no such. Let's implement the GCD function. One of the possibilities is to remember that in Java Virtual Machine we have a bigInteger class with GCD already implemented. So I can turn A to bigInteger and calculate the GCD with B as bigInteger and then return to the int type because I know that the result definitely fits into the int type. That's possibility number 1. And another possibility is to implement my own recursive GCD implementation, which goes the following way, as I hope many of you know. If the first argument is 0, then the answer is definitely just the second argument. And otherwise, we can take the second argument modulo this non-zero first argument and the first argument. Please note that this GCD function of 2 zeros gives us a 0. And it's worth mentioning that the result of this function is a call to the same function itself. So this is an example of something called tail recursion, which will allow this to execute much faster. Now, in the linear time, well, honestly speaking, except for the GCD calculation, we have calculated the GCD of all the differences. And we are just to find whether there is a period for the second camera that is a divisor of all these differences and therefore is the divisor of their GCD. Let's use a simple linear search to find the first period that is indeed a divisor of this GCD. And if there is no such period, then there is no way to fulfill the uncovered moments, and we can continue because this period for the first camera is not interesting to us. Otherwise, the period for the second camera is not null, and we have found the correct periods for the first and second camera. So we can now calculate the phases, the starting points for both cameras. The phase for the first camera should be such that it covers moment number I and moment number j. So basically we're speaking about remainder of these moments modular period. But if we just write remainder modular period, the problem is that in the output they didn't allow us to use the phase equal to 0. So we have to adjust our formula to make it a non-zero starting point. We can do it using simple math like this. Well, it looks like a useful code snippet for calculating the starting phase, knowing the remainder and the period. So let me extract it as a method that I will reuse very soon, because I want to calculate the starting phase for the second camera, which is such a starting moment that it will cover successfully all the uncovered moments by the first camera. But if the array of uncovered moments is empty, which is possible, we can start with any starting point for the second camera, for example, a 0. Now we have calculated the phases and the periods for both cameras that work for our test case. So we can return these 4 numbers as an array from our solve method. So what have we done overall? We have iterated over I and j being the 2 indices of interesting moments out of 0, 1, and 2 that will be covered by the first camera. And for this I and j, we have iterated over all possible periods for the first camera covering these 2. And we have found the possible period for the second camera covering all the uncovered moments. Therefore, if we haven't found any 4 good numbers during these iterations, there is no way to cover all the moments with 2 cameras. And by our convention, we are to return null in this case overall. Now I can run the local tests to make sure that my outputs look really nice. Unfortunately, my outputs don't coincide fully to the outputs from the problem statement because there are several possible answers to each input, and if I print some suitable for numbers, it's also okay, but it doesn't coincide to the sample. I can now submit this code to the system, but unfortunately this very code receives the verdict time limit exceeded. And here is why it happens. Think of the number of possible periods of camera 1 that we are iterating over. This is the number of periods that are divisors of the difference between moment I and moment j. So if the jury gives us integers for moment 0, moment 1, and moment 2 that have a difference with very many divisors, we are going to iterate over a very large amount of possible periods. So let's design a trick to oversmart the jury that can give us such a test case so that they won't be able to make us iterate over a lot of periods for the first camera. Let's select the 3 moments of time that we are working with, not as the moments of time with indices 0, 1, and 2, but in some smarter way. One of the possibilities would be to select these 3 moments of time randomly out of all moments of time. But this will make my solution non-deterministic, so let's switch to a deterministic possibility. That is, let's take the 3 moments of time such that the difference between the first of them and the third of them is as small as possible. This way, if there are little moments of time overall, then our solution will be fast because the test case is small, and if there is a large number of moments overall, then we will find the 3 consecutive moments with not so high difference between the first and the third of them, and therefore the number of divisors of this interval will be less than in the previous case. So I want to find the index such that the difference between the moment at this index plus 2 and the moment with this index is small as possible. I iterate over all possible indices and find the index with the minimal such value. And this is high time to remind ourselves that the number of moments in the input file can be less than 3. It can be a 2. And all our previous thinking was using the fact that there are at least 3 moments of time in the input file, which is not true. So let's fix it right now. In the case of 2 moments of time, our min by or null method will return the camera to. So we have covered the case of 2 moments of time, and now we have the wonderful index that is to be used in case of 3 and more moments of time. So let's use the triple of indices from this index to this index plus 2.
So that was a great talk, and what a great surprise. We have the man himself, Mikhail Dvorkin, actually. So some of the questions that I'm getting from the chat are, the standard questions. What actually makes a competitive programmer turn to Kotlin as their main programming language?
I think that Kotlin safety, it's like, it's harder to shoot your own leg in Kotlin with some wrong code that is really easier to do in C++ or Python. Kotlin really makes your makes your playground safe, and you don't do bad stuff to your own code.
Do you have that kind of experience in programming competition? What was your primary competition language back in 2007?
I started in Pascal. Our 8-more team started competing in Pascal, and then we switched to Java. It was our well-thought decision. We were afraid of C++ because it's really hard to know all the details of this language. It's like takes your whole life to understand the language all the way through, and we couldn't spend our entire life for that. So we decided, okay, let's choose a language that we understand better, and we considered it and switched to Java, which I'm really grateful that we made this decision. So all 3 team members decided that Java is more elegant, more easy to understand than C++. And then later, I tried Python as well for competitive programming, but of course, we all understand the time limit issue with Python. And then I switched to Kotlin with great love.
How long ago did that happen?
I thought it's like 3 years probably that I'm doing Kotlin for competitive programming.
Wow, that's impressive. What resources would you recommend for others who actually want to follow into your steps and try their hand at Kotlin competitive programming?
Yeah, well, I hope that there will be more of those. But as for now, I'd recommend reading the other people code in Kotlin. For example, in Kotlin Heroes, you have a lot of high-tier competitive programmers that are forced to use Kotlin, even if they don't do it in the real life. So you can read like Gennady Karatkevich or Petr Mitrochev's code in Kotlin, whatever. And then in usual contests, many modern systems allow you to read the other people's code after the contest. So you can find the people who write in Kotlin and read their code. For example, I read the code of Roman Elizarov sometimes, and I enjoy his style. Although we all should understand that when a person solves a competitive programming, he's really not thinking about the style usually, but it's like doing tap, tap, tap to solve the problem as fast as he could. Anyways, but still you can see that what the person meant in his code, and when you read it, you still get the tricks and the small ideas and the local features that you want to use later yourself.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Do you have any words for those who actually want to try Kotlin in competitive programming that will inspire them? What will make their life better?
Yeah, well, I think that what will make their life better, honestly speaking, is the IDE, the using the IDEA, because you just open a Hello World program in Kotlin. You just type fun main, which is easier than in Java, for example, or even in C++. You just open the main file and you start typing the correct verbs that you need, like read line, print something, and then using the IDE, using the drop-down menus, you will just see the methods that will always do the good things for you. I think that my most loved example is the collections. So you take your array, you type a dot, and then you see the drop-down menu with all the possible methods that you can use with the collection in competitive programming. So you just think of the English verb that you need right now, like filter all of them and map them to something. And then you select the exact very method, and you well, you understand the syntax of this method, because it's really not hard to start using this Kotlin syntax with lambda functions and stuff. And then you just type what you mean from English or from your native language. You more or less translate to Kotlin, which is really a pleasant procedure.
Wow, that's exciting. Thank you very much, Michael, for tuning in. I think that everyone is now inspired to actually try something new with programming competitions, and we are definitely waiting for everyone on the Kotlin Heroes competition that is coming up. But if you want to actually continue using C++, well, C++ is a very prominent competitive programming language, and experienced contestants definitely use that. But the next talk will actually introduce you to all the best tips and tricks for C++ coding at CLion. And the next speaker will be Phil Nash, developer advocate for C++ tools at JetBrains for over 4 years. So take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Phil Nash, developer advocate at JetBrains, and I'm going to give you a tour of some tips and tricks in CLion in the context of competitive coding challenges. Now, I should confess up front, I'm not a competitive coder myself, but I do know C++ and I do know CLion, so I hope there's plenty you're going to get out of this. With that in mind, I'm going to work through an example of a typical coding challenge and see how CLion can help us through it all. So here's a new CLion project. Just been created, so it has a default hello world sample, and there's just one other file that I've already added here, and that's this markdown file containing the problem description. If I open that and close the raw view, we get to read the description in markdown rendered as nice HTML. Now, this is based on a problem I found on one of the common competitive programming sites, but I've reworded it a bit and changed the examples, so it's not an exact copy. But it's a fairly simple challenge. Purpose here is to get a feel for what CLion can help with, rather than getting too distracted by the problem itself. So, write a function that finds the longest common prefix string amongst a vector of strings. No common prefix is found, return an empty string. So far so good. We've then got some examples here to verify, and some constraints down here at the bottom. Now, I think the main thing to note here is that both the vector itself and the strings inside it can be empty. They'll also never get very big, which may or may not be useful to know, and the bit about just lowercase English characters, sometimes that can be useful as well. Okay, let's get started with the problem. Now, going back to main, we could actually just start from here, just write our code directly in main, visually verifying from the command line maybe, or in the debugger, or perhaps using asserts. But personally, as an advocate for testing and TDD, I prefer to use a test framework, even for this. Now, as I said, I'm not a competitive programmer. You may disagree that that's the best approach, but I do know some in the competitive programming community that do this. It's not just me. So while that's not the purpose of this talk, if you are skeptical, do keep an open mind, watch how it works out. Right, now, certainly we don't want to waste a lot of time getting set up with a test framework. Fortunately, the framework that I originally got started, Catch, now Catch 2, comes in a single header. So if you've already got it lying around, it's quick and easy to get going with. So I've got it just off screen here, copied it onto the clipboard, going to paste it straight into CLion's folder view here, and you can see it's going to copy it in and even let me rename it if I wanted. I'm not going to do that. Now, if you've used Catch 2 before, you'll know that to avoid long compile times, which is really going to kill us, waiting for the whole framework to build every time, what we want to do is just add one source file. We'll use this one, where we first of all include the catch header, and then just before that we hash define catch config main. We just do that in that one file, and at this point we can start compiling. It's going to take 10 seconds or so, so let's get that out of the way while we'll go and add another source file. Now here we've got the option of adding a class, which will take care of a lot of boilerplate for us if we need that, but we probably don't need a class, so certainly not a whole file for it. We just want a simple C++ source file. So do make sure you select this one though. rather than the even more generic file. Otherwise, it's not going to be automatically added to the CMake file. Now, for our purposes, we probably don't want an associated header. Could have that if we wanted, but we do want it in the CMake target. That's going to save us a bit of time, so leave that checked. Now, this file needs to include the catch header too, so we'll do that. And notice that they're doing this, it's just a couple of keystrokes with CLion's completions. So it's not taken very long to get up and running. And in fact, even opening a catch2 test case gets suggested after just a single keystroke here. So we haven't wasted a lot of time on this, and we're already ready to get started. Now at this point, I would usually talk about good test naming, but I don't think that's a concern for us here. In fact, we don't even have to give you one, so let's skip that. And at that point, we are ready to start. Let's go and have a look at our test inputs. So if I open the problem statement file again, and I'm going to split and move down so that I can see them both on the screen at once. Now these arrays here, they're in pseudocode. This is not the notation that we can use in C++. So I'm just going to grab the strings themselves out, and we're going to pass them into a function. Up here, we're going to write called LCP for longest common prefix. And we'll pass them in as a direct array or initializer list constructor. And then compare that, the result of that, against our expected output, again from our problem description. Now we're missing a few things here, of course, including the actual function, the LCP function. We haven't written that yet. Now this is classic TDD. Now I'm not recommending you use strict full TDD here, but actually some of the techniques and principles do still help us. So that's what I want to watch out for. So by writing the calling code first, the test first approach, it does actually give us a better idea of what our function needs to look like. So that's why we've done it that way around. But now we actually want to go and write the function. So before we do that, again, I wouldn't do this in production code, but I know here it's common practice. So we're going to using namespace std, so we don't have to do std : everywhere. And now we know we need to return a string. The function name is LCP, and it takes a vector of strings, or maybe even string views. I would actually use string views here. And in fact, I'm going to even return string views. Now it's common to receive these vectors as non-const references in one of these coding challenges. And sometimes you can use that to your advantage by mutating the inputs in place without simpler. You can just leave those temporary initializer list constructors there. And then we'll change that later if we really need to. And finally, to get the function just to compile, it's another TDD trick, just return the simplest value. We're not looking to pass the test here just to get it to compile, just so that we can see it running end to end. And in this case, that's going to be an empty string. So we can now compile that already, and it does compile. Not going to run it because we're not actually put any tests in even yet. So before we do that, let's grab the next example. Now, so we're not testing anything just yet. What I want to do is capture all the examples up front with the least amount of code for now. Now, we've only had those two examples from the problem description, but given what we know about the constraints, I'm going to have a couple more, because we know we're going to need to handle the empty vector case. And there may be a special case around a single item as well. So we're going to add that one as a separate test. So we've got 4 tests now. You might want to add some more. I can certainly think of some others to tease out some different edge cases, but we're going to go with that for now. And we're finished with our markdown page. I'm going to close that to give us some more room. Now, obviously we can run that at this point and nothing gets tested because we don't have any test assertions. So let's add them all quickly by using column selection mode to give us multiple cursors. So we'll use catch's check macro, because that will continue even on a failure, so we can see how many things fail and what they fail with. And now we see some results. Now there's only 2 failures because 2 of our tests were testing for the empty string, which is what we were returning anyway. We want to force that then we can just put something else in the return value for now, just to see them all failing. Might be worth doing that. Again, it's a TDD technique. You may or may not want to adopt it. But, I mean, do notice that our compile and run turnaround is pretty fast. So getting that speed is part of the secret of TDD, but it really serves us well here as well. And now we know that we're testing what we think we're testing. So that's an advantage. And by the way, if you are using Catch 2, you can also use the integrated test runner, just by adding a run configuration for it. Now I'm going to use the console output here because it shows the count of failed assertions, which is going to be better for our usage, but experiment and see what works best for you. Enough talk, let's start implementing our function. So again, steering close to TDD principles, let's get those simpler edge cases out of the way first, because sometimes that can simplify things later. So empty container, that one's easy enough. What about a single item? So it's easy enough to get that one out of the way as well, but maybe that will drop out of the algorithm once we've developed it. Maybe it won't. So we'll come back and look at that again afterwards. But for the rest, we're obviously going to need to loop over the strings at some point. So we'll probably reach for a for loop. Now, notice I get some completion options here. Now, if I accepted indexed for, I get a live template with an integer index, and that can be useful. But if I just want each string, maybe I don't want to do it that way. So let's have a look at what's available. If we go into the settings and search for live templates, under C++, you can see a few options. Now, the last one there is one that I've added, and we'll look at how you can add your own later, and we'll also see that one in action sooner. But the first three there are bundled with CLion, and they're all to do with for loops. So we've seen the first one already. Next one we have is iter for range-based for loops, and then it for iterator-based loops. So we could go for the range-based for loop here and get every string. But I think what we really want is to compare the first string with every other string. So we're going to want to skip the first one in the loop. And that means we're going to go for either index-based or iterator-based. Let's go with the iterators. So it is. So I'll shorten the suggested iterator name here. And then we just need to start from the second string. And we're about done. There's at least one item in the vector at this point. Okay, so that's going to get easier, but for now, at least CLion will help us with all the completions, so it's not so onerous. Now, I can see that strs0 coming up again and again. Let's extract that as a variable. Replace all three usages so far, and I'm going to call it S1. Looking a bit nicer. Now let's finish our call to mismatch. Unfortunately, we're still sitting there. So now we've made our call, we can hover over mismatch and see the full signature. We can see that it returns a pair of iterators. And we can probably guess, even without looking it up, that that's going to be the iterator for each string at the point at which they diverge. And that's exactly what it is. So let's catch that result. Now for either of those, we can get the common prefix length using stood distance. I wrote it, the mistake I made, it's the minimum common prefix we want, not the maximum. Easy mistake to make, but easy enough to change. Just need to change our stood max call to stood min. Trouble is now that variable name is very wrong, and we've used it in 4 places. But changing them boil down to optimal code, even as they are, so I'm going to leave them as they are. But thinking about the point we get the current common prefix, we get a 0 here. We know that we're not going to be able to get any lower than that, so we can shortcut the loop and avoid looking at the rest of the strings because that's not going to do us any good anyway. So run again, the tests still pass, but are we actually hitting that case? We're not really doing TDD, so we have less confidence in that. So let's just add a breakpoint there and find out. Well, our breakpoint is hit, so yep, that's it. And if we look up the stack, we can see that it's our set of strings that have no common prefix, so that's not very surprising. Everything is as we expect, that's good. And finally, we can see that our algorithm handles the single string case, after all, because we're going to get the full size of the first and only string, say the previous attempts. Now, there's a few things that you can do here. Each will have their own advantages. First, you could block comment the code out. Bit of a blunt instrument, but it works. It's familiar, quick and easy to do. Personally, I prefer to push all of the code into a namespace, so I can easily switch between them, and it continues to compile. Now, that's where that live template that I created comes in. If I bring up live templates here, so you can see it there. I can even get to it with this shortcut. Now, because it's a surrounds with template, it's going to wrap all the highlighted code and indent it properly, just in one step. So that's what we're going to do here, but I'm also going to mention a third approach, which is just delete the code, because we can still get back to it at any time with local history. Save or perform a refactoring or some other action that changes the code, you get like an automatic check-in to this local history. You can see the diffs go back to any point in time. You can even see test results in there. So we're going to stick to time it's going to be over the string instead of the container, that first string. But then I'll grab the iteration over the rest of the strings again from above, so it was handy to still have that there, although it's so quick to write with the live template. Wouldn't have been that bad anyway. Now we want to compare the indexed character, but only if we're not off the end of the string yet. So we need to test that first. Test for that specific case, other than the single string version. So we might want to add one just to be sure. And we're done. So looking for optimization opportunities then, we can see that this strs.begin +1 is redundantly recomputed for every character. Now, good optimizing compiler should still be able to spot that and hoist it out of the loop for us, but just to be sure, we might want to extract that as a variable ourselves, since it is so easy to do here. And I think that's as far as we'll go with this problem. I just want to go back and look at some things in a bit more detail though. So first, for some of the refactorings that I did, I needed to select a particular expression. And while you can do that just with the cursor keys or the mouse, if you're already positioned somewhere in the expression, you can expand the selection to increasing scopes with just a single shortcut. And of course, bring it back down if you want to. And then once you've got what you need, you can see all your refactoring options from this context menu here. Now, of course, it's best to learn the shortcuts to be able to use them most rapidly. And these are some of the easier to remember shortcuts mostly. But if you do forget, or if you're trying to learn them in the first place or just see what's available, this is a great place to go. So having a look through, rename and extract variable. Well, we saw those a few times. And they're probably the most useful refactorings overall. Now, extract constant is just like extract variable, but it extracts to a global or static constant instead. For extract method, it extracts the selected code into a function or method. And while you might use this one less, it does more work for you if you do need it, because it works out what all the arguments need to be passed in and all their types. It can be a bit tedious otherwise. Now, all of these extractions can be reversed back again with inline, another refactoring. And then we have extract parameter. Again, like extract variable, this extracts the expression out, but in this case to the caller, passing it in as a parameter. So this can do, the first few are built in, and then there are any that you added as live templates, like my namespace template. And from here, you can also jump straight to the page in settings where we can set them up. So let's have a look there. So these are the 4 that we saw earlier. But looking at the bottom, we see where we can specify the abbreviation for triggering them, the description that goes in these dollar symbols. These can be just placeholders, but for the other meanings, we need to look in the Edit Variables dialog. Now here we can map variables to expressions or default values. Expressions can include literals, other variables, or special functions. And these functions are quite comprehensive. Some are quite sophisticated, like the right side type, used here to get the type for the iterator. Functions are fully documented in the template variables page of the CLion docs, and it's well worth having a look through there to see what it can do for you. Now, another whole set of features that makes CLion particularly powerful is its search and navigation features. Finding path, for example, has an easy to, but CLion really comes into its own when you apply its understanding of the shortcut straight from here. It is especially useful if you often use something like local programming with CLion.
And as always, we are joined by Phil. Thank you so much for your talk, Phil. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Lydia. Good to be here.
So it was a great demo of all the possibility of CLion, and I really enjoy working with CLion as a main tool for C++ development. So thank you so much for actually doing that. And what do you think are the main advantages of CLion compared to all the other popular IDEs?
I see. Get the hard questions out of the way first, eh? Time to think. I think that we don't want to look at individual features, because for any given feature, you might say, oh, such and such an IDE has that already. But then you find that, for each answer, you've got like a different competitor that has that feature. Whereas CLion has them all. And I think in terms of feature density, CLion probably has the biggest number of useful features, at least for me. But then also it's about experience, not just features. And particularly if you are used to using other JetBrains IDEs, you'll be very comfortable and at home with CLion, with the look and feel and the consistency across the board, and also consistency across platforms. So if you're using different platforms, it's nice to know that you've got the same basic experience across all of them. That said, there's a couple of things that I think it does particularly well at in terms of features, like the refactoring support. I've not seen anything that gets close to what CLion does, as well as some of the code generation and the local history that I showed in the video. I've not really seen anywhere else either. So we've got some really great stuff that sets us apart, I think.
Do you indeed use all the shortcuts in your everyday development?
The find action is so useful because you can just remember one shortcut that's going to get you all of the rest. So you don't have to remember all of them. Although obviously if you're going to do competitive coding, it's probably a good idea to get quite a few under your belt.
I know that there is a plugin, but I'm not sure, maybe to IDEA or maybe to CLion as well, that actually punishes you every time you use a mouse instead of a keyboard shortcut. Did you actually help to develop that one? I think that's a great tool to learn.
Covering the video, they just sort of didn't really drop out of that particular demo, but live templates are a really useful way of generating code because you can customize exactly what it actually generates. But we also have lots of, particularly around generating all the boilerplate for classes, constructors, destructors, operators, including the stream insertion operator, which is really tedious to write. You can just get for free with just one keyboard shortcut. So we've got all of that generation under just a single shortcut, which is certainly Command N on the Mac. I forget what it is on Windows now. But then we also have quick fixes, which is probably like our #1 feature. I didn't even mention it in the video. It's usually Alt or Option Enter. And that's like the closest we got to a, just do the right thing option, which usually will involve a quick fix or some change to the code, just in the context of what you've actually written. And it will also have to rewrite things in maybe a more modern or more optimal style. So those two shortcuts for generate and for quick fixes and other things, probably the two shortcuts you should learn before almost anything else, I would say.
Wow, that sounds exciting. What would you recommend to those who actually haven't used CLion previously for C++ development, but want to try just right now?
Well, do it. Yeah, try it out. But so keep those two shortcuts in mind and just write code as you normally would. Use those wherever you, particularly if you do see it highlighting anything it thinks is wrong or that it can change and improve on. Try the quick fix shortcut to see what it gives you, and then just build up from there. Also remember find action so you can explore all of the other features just at the click of a button.
Wow, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming and giving a talk. I think that was exciting and very insightful, and I'm sure lots of our spectators will actually learn a lot from that.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And now I'd like to remind you of the best way to actually get access to CLion and all the other IDEs. So JetBrains has a really great educational licenses program that you can actually use using your university email or domain. So you can apply for the educational license using a QR code that is now above my head on the screen. And I think that's a great opportunity to actually try all the best of all worlds of IDEs and the best JetBrains tools and see how that works for you and explore and make sure that you actually try your hand at all the tips that you've heard today. And the next talk that we will have would be by Helen Scott. She's a Java developer advocate. She joined JetBrains in July this year, and she will tell you about the JetBrains IDEA. And IDEA is obviously a flagship project of JetBrains, and all the best features and things are definitely available there. So tune in to know more about that product.
Hi, my name's Helen Scott and I am a Java developer advocate here at JetBrains. I'm going to show you some cool things that you can do today in IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate Edition, which is of course free for students and teachers, as well as our community and education editions. We're going to cover things that will help you to go faster when you're writing code, manipulating code, reading code, or refactoring code. And with that, let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is create a brand new Hello World project, so that we can get up and running quickly with IntelliJ IDEA. From the start screen, we can create a new project, open or import an existing project, or get a project from version control. We're going to go ahead and click New Project. In the New Project wizard, we can see the version of Java that we're using, and we could also select libraries or frameworks to shape our project if required. I'm not going to do any of that today though, so I'll click Next and Next again, and I'll name my project Hello World. And then I'll click Finish. We'll navigate to our source folder and create the class that we want in here. We can use a shortcut to do this. We can use Command and N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows and Linux to create. They both print the same. Sticking with live templates, we can use SOUT to quickly generate system.out.println and output our message to the console. Lastly, we can use Ctrl-Shift and R on macOS or Ctrl-Shift and F10 on Windows and Linux to run our program and see that it prints out Hello World, which SDK we're using, and if we want to, we can download a new JDK from our selected vendor, and IntelliJ IDEA will ensure that the JDK is downloaded and put in the appropriate location for the operator. Use a lot. We're going to create a new class called MakeJavaBean. We'll create a couple of private variables in here. Firstly, we'll add a string, and then we'll add a private int as well. Now we're ready to start generating code. We can do this with Command and N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows and Linux. First up, let's generate a constructor for our class. Now, let's generate some getters for our two variables. Next up, let's generate the equals and hashcode methods for our class. We can accept these options as the defaults, but you can change them if you need to. Let's go ahead with a toString method and generate that as well. And there we have it. We've created our JavaBean. 43 lines of code in total, and we didn't type much of it at all. I only found this feature out whilst I was making this video for you, so I wanted to share it. If you, like me, prefer your constructors at the top of your class and the getters and setters out of the way, you can use a feature called Rearrange Code. The fastest way to get to it is through Find Actions, which is Command-Shift and A on macOS or Control-Shift and A on Windows and Linux to bring up the Find Actions menu. Now we can type in what we're looking for, Rearrange Code. And there we have it. This is configurable by default, but out of the box it will shift your constructors up and move your getters and setters to the bottom. We've already seen some live templates in action, but let's take a look at a few more. Firstly, complete current statement using Shift, Command and Return on macOS and Control, Shift and Return on Windows and Linux will always strive to make your code compile, whether that's completing the method you're currently working on or closing the parentheses and putting a semicolon at the end of your statement. This is a great safety net. In terms of live templates, the for-I loop is really useful. You can quickly create the loop construct this way, and you can use the tab key to move between the parts of the loop construct that may, or definitely do, need your input. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to replace our loop with an enhanced for loop to improve the readability. If we want to explore other options or change it back, we can use the same shortcut again. We're going to look at this in some more detail later in the presentation. Writing test classes is something that we should all be doing. You can use Shift, Command and T on macOS or Control, Shift and T on Windows and Linux to toggle a corresponding test class. If one doesn't exist, IntelliJ IDEA will help you to create it. But in this instance, we actually already have a test class and we just need a new test. We can use Command and N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows and Linux again to get IntelliJ IDEA to generate it. We can then use the same shortcut to toggle back to the class that we're working with. Postfix completion is something that you should definitely be incorporating into your repertoire of skills. Postfix completion allows you to think linguistically about what your code is doing and create it that way. For example, we can create this method using code completion, then type in Kiwi with quotes, and retrospectively make it a string with .var. We could also use NN on the string we passed to ensure that the item is not null. Furthermore, we can combine this with live templates to say, print out the item. I recommend you check this out. There is upwards of 40 different types of postfix completion in IntelliJ IDEA. One clipboard is never enough, and IntelliJ IDEA knows this. You can use Shift, Command and V on macOS or Shift, Control and V on Windows and Linux to bring up the paste from history dialog. And yes, it's configurable, and yes, it supports emoticons. Alongside recent history, IntelliJ IDEA gives you local history, which you can access by pressing Shift twice to search everywhere. This is like having a local version control repository on your machine. It might well save you one day. IntelliJ IDEA keeps a record of all the changes you've ever made to each file with a diff view that helps you to understand what's been added, changed, or deleted. Writing code is only a small part of what we do as developers. Manipulating code, or someone else's code, is going to be something that we'll also have to do a lot of the time. IntelliJ IDEA gives us a lot of options for moving chunks of code around. We can use Command, Shift and down arrow on macOS or Control, Shift and down arrow on Windows and Linux to move a statement down, or the corresponding shortcut with the up arrow to move the statement up. Note that IntelliJ IDEA doesn't let us move it out of the context, irrespective of which line we select. If we select the method declaration line itself, IntelliJ IDEA allows us to jump that whole block of code up or down throughout our class structure, so we can position it wherever we see fit. We can build up our selection based on scope by using Option and up arrow on macOS or Control and W on Windows and Linux to expand the scope of our selection. We can then use Option and down arrow on macOS or Control, Shift and down arrow on Windows and Linux to decrease the scope of our selection. We can use the usual shortcuts to cut and paste content in IntelliJ IDEA, as you'd expect. But we may also want to duplicate a line in our editor. We may just want to change a small portion of it, or we may want to apply the whole line to somewhere else. IntelliJ IDEA lets us do this with Command and D on macOS or Control and D on Windows and Linux. Let's paste our comment up here. IntelliJ IDEA gives you lots of ways to manipulate strings. For example, you can press return in the middle of a string, and IntelliJ IDEA will append it for you. If you made a mistake doing that, or you just want to join two lines together, you can use Control, Shift and J on macOS, Windows and Linux to join the lines together. If you want to place carrots in multiple locations, you can hold down Option on macOS or Alt and Shift on Windows and Linux and click to place multiple cursors. This is very useful when you want to make the same change in many places. Column select mode is one of those hidden gems in IntelliJ IDEA that makes working with any kind of list format much easier. In this example, I need to make all of my strings final. I could go through them individually, or I could toggle column selection mode with Shift Command and 8 on macOS or Alt Shift and Insert on Windows and Linux. Once I've toggled that on, I can drag my caret down my list without holding any other keys down, and then I can type in my missing word, final. Don't forget to toggle the shortcut off again with the same shortcut. Java supports two types of comments. Firstly, line comments, and secondly, block comments. Instead of using the earlier shortcuts for column select mode, we can also hold down Option on macOS or Alt on Windows and Linux and drag the cursor down our column, and then enter forward slashes to create 3 line comments. Alternatively, we can also select everything and then use Command and forward slash on macOS or Control and forward slash on Windows and Linux to quickly comment content out this way. However, we can also ask IntelliJ to give us a block comment with Option, Command and forward slash on macOS or Control, Shift and forward slash on Windows and Linux. This looks a little bit cleaner when multiple lines are involved. I'm going to use my favourite shortcut here, a Command E on macOS or Control and E on Windows and Linux to find a badly formatted file. We can then use Option, Command and L on macOS or Control, Alt and L on Windows and Linux to properly format our code. This is one shortcut that you really do need to teach your fingers to do on autopilot. It'll save you a lot of time and deliver you well-structured code time and time again. Okay, this is my favourite section of this whole presentation. IntelliJ IDEA is super smart. It's always working in the background to reduce errors, fix errors that we do make, and suggest different ways of doing things. Let's take a quick tour of just some of the things that it can do. Errors are something that are part of our careers as developers, but IntelliJ IDEA has a lot of work that it does to reduce the number that we make and help guide us when we ask for it. Let's look at this method. We'll try and create a new list that contains a bunch of strings, and then we'll try and turn it into an instance of a hash map. This is never going to work, and IntelliJ IDEA knows that. We can use Option and Return on macOS or Alt and Return on Windows and Linux to ask IntelliJ IDEA to help us. It gives us a bunch of options to review that could fix the issue, but it can only do so much. It doesn't know which fix we actually want. In this Now I can see that IntelliJ IDEA has highlighted both integer and string in grey. Use Command and 1 and jump back into our editor. There's quite a lot that's wrong here. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to help us fix it up. Firstly, that's definitely not a string with a value like 20. Let's make it an int. Next up, our method has declared that it doesn't return anything, yet here we are trying to return true. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to change the method declaration. Lastly, we can't go changing variables that we've declared as final. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to make the variable mutable. There are a lot of intentions in IntelliJ IDEA that I recommend you check out. They can often improve the readability of your code or be an excellent learning tool just to toggle between options. Wherever you see this dark orange, you can use that same shortcut of Option Return on macOS or Alt and Return on Windows and Linux to see the suggestion. This code is valid as it is, but if we take IntelliJ IDEA's recommendation, it's a little bit cleaner. We're not done there, however. Now we can see that IntelliJ IDEA has another suggestion for us, which I'm also going to accept. I think you'll agree that it looks a lot more readable now. This shortcut will never change what your code actually does. It will just help you to look at different ways of expressing the same thing. var is a relatively new feature in the Java world, and a very useful one. Let's create a new file input stream called stream, and IntelliJ IDEA is highlighting this as an error because we need to either wrap it in a try-catch block or declare that our method might throw an exception. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we can see that file input stream is quite a lengthy string in its own right. So seeing on both the left and right hand side of the assignment is kind of heavy-handed. We can ask IntelliJ IDEA to replace the left hand side with var, and that improves the readability of our code. When you can clearly see from the right hand side of the assignment what type the left hand side is, then var can be used to reduce the amount of boilerplate code that you need to create. That said, please don't use var if it will harm the readability of your code. Take this slightly crazy line of code. I'm going to declare this as a var to start with and see how I get on. If you pay attention to the hints in IntelliJ IDEA, you can see that eventually it's a long, but you're the one typing the code. It might not be you who's reading it and who needs to understand it. For this reason, I strongly recommend that you use the same inspection to toggle the statement to the explicit variable type, in this case, a long. We can further streamline this statement by using Option and Enter on macOS or Alt and Enter on Windows and Linux and change our code to use a size method. Now it looks better. IntelliJ IDEA has lots of inspections and more are always being added as the language evolves. Here are some of the Java 8 refactorings. We could replace a lambda expression with a method reference, or perhaps our stream and count methods with a size method, like we saw earlier. Writing code is an art. We rarely get it right first time, at least I don't. Even if I do, as the Java language evolves, there will always be a need for an element of refactoring as features come and go. One of the most useful refactorings is extracting and inlining methods. Sometimes you can get a little bit carried away and end up with too much logic in your method. Being the diligent developer that you are, you'll want to improve the readability of your code by extracting it to a new method. We can use Option Command and M on macOS or Control Alt and M on Windows and Linux to get IntelliJ IDEA to extract this to a new method. IntelliJ IDEA will use the comment if there is one and suggest it as a name for the new method. When we press refactor, IntelliJ IDEA goes another step further and lets us know that this code also appears in another method and would we like to replace that occurrence as well. Let's press replace and see what the code looks like. The method extract this loop is now in the two locations as we expected. However, we can also change our mind. IntelliJ IDEA will allow us to inline code just as easily. To inline the method, let's use Option Command and N on a macOS and Control Alt and N on Windows and Linux to inline it. IntelliJ IDEA will inline the code wherever it appeared. It's the exact opposite of what we just did. As well as extracting and inlining methods, we can do the same with variables. We have 3 occurrences of the same variable here, order size. Let's use Option Command and V on macOS or Control Alt and V on Windows and Linux to extract it and replace all occurrences that IntelliJ IDEA has detected. Now we have a new string variable up here. We can optionally declare it final or use a var if we want to. Just as we did with this method, we can also inline variables. To do this, you can use Option Command and N on macOS or Control Alt and N on Windows and Linux to inline it. We can also use Command G on macOS or F3 on Windows and Linux to jump to the next occurrence of our changes. Rarely do we create the perfect structure of packages and classes from the start. Fortunately, IntelliJ IDEA supports us here and does all the lift. When we do this, IntelliJ IDEA will update all the dependencies for us, so we don't need to worry about that. Something else that you're likely to want to do a lot is refactor a class, rename it. We can use Shift or career. There's a good chance that you'll need to read and, more to the point, understand someone else's code. Let's look at the things that we can do in IntelliJ IDEA that can help us with this. Parameter hints may seem like a small thing, but as code bases get bigger and more realistic, they can read what works for you and hide what doesn't. The next method though, that each step of the operation, IntelliJ IDEA tells us what the output will be, allowing us to step through at our own pace and understand each operation before we move on. When we want to understand what someone else's code does, or ours, after some time away, find usages can be very useful. To see what is shortcut, will toggle to changed files only. You can also type directly into this dialog and search for windows that might or might not have a shortcut associated with them, such as Maven, or potentially. Search Everywhere also supports filtering commands with // such as /edit. Hid some of this stuff to help you focus on what I wanted to show you. However, let's take a quick look at how you can configure it. First off, you can maximize your code space using Shift Command and F12 on macOS and Control Shift and F12 on Windows and Linux. Now, let's start hiding some things. First up, let's turn off our editor tabs. Now, we can hide our status bar. Let's also turn off our navigation bar. And let's get rid of our main toolbar as well. Lastly, let's hide our toolbar windows. Here you can type in whatever you're looking for. For example, inspections, live templates, or perhaps appearance. Talking of appearance, and since it's the JetBrains Education Day, I thought I'd show you a fun thing that you can do to make IntelliJ IDEA your own. Let's use Shift-Shift to search for a background image. I have one here that I'm going to use, and I can select how I want it to appear as well. When I click OK, I can see that my JetBrains Education Day image is now set as my background image in IntelliJ IDEA. I've shown you a lot of tips and tricks in this video and their corresponding keyboard shortcuts. Using these keyboard shortcuts will allow you to code faster, and as your finger muscle memory grows, so will your repertoire of shortcuts that you can rely on.
Hi, and thank you so much for that exciting talk. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you. I'm glad. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about the idea in your life. Do you use it daily? Is it something that you're familiar with only while working at JetBrains? How that works for you?
So I have only been using IntelliJ IDEA in anger since July, which is why I guess my talk is focused the way it is, because I found that my productivity and my speed just increased astronomically when I was able to leave my mouse to one side and start to learn some of the keyboard shortcuts. Just for the record, I haven't managed to commit all of the ones I went through today to memory, but even if I add 1 or 2 a week to my finger muscle memory, then I can go an awful lot faster. So I'm fairly fresh to the IDE, but I'm absolutely loving it. It's such a powerful tool.
Wow, that's great. Have you been using Java mostly, or do you use other programming languages as well?
I am a bit of a Java fangirl. I started learning Java at university a long time ago, and my career took me away from kind of hardcore programming, and I'm now coming back to it and obviously seeing the evolution of the Java language that it's gone through. It is immense, but equally when I was first learning Java, IntelliJ IDEA was barely born. So coming back to it, and now coming back to it with IntelliJ IDEA, is such an amazing experience because it takes so much of the pain out of the day, and it does a lot of the lifting and shifting for you, which is much appreciated, especially when you're skilling back up on something.
Indeed, IDE is like an integral part of a programming language. It is something that you cannot actually use apart from one another, and
I'm not sure I can pick just one. The obvious shortcut, and it is where I started, is Shift-Shift, which is search everywhere. It's gold, and you can get to everything from there. So that's always a great portal, a great starting point. In terms of things I love about the IDE, I love its flexibility. The fact that I can write my Java code in it, and I can create my blogs in Markdown in it as well. I love the fact that it can get me up and running really quickly, which is why I did the Hello World at the start. You can go from 0 to hero very quickly with it. And then as you learn more and you unwrap more of the present, you can expose yourself to more of the functionality. You can learn more of the shortcuts. And now I find myself using find action just really easily. And 2 months ago, I would have gone, find action's not for me. I'm going to stick with Shift-Shift. So I can feel my skill set growing as I'm getting more familiar with the tool.
The best thing that I love about shortcuts in IntelliJ IDEA is that at some point I've seen some merge keyboard stickers that actually allowed you to label every single button with the shortcut associated with that button. And I think that was a really clever thing. So yeah, if you are not using one of those yet, definitely take a look around. That's one of the best things to improve your coding and coding speed specifically in that really simple way.
That's good to know. I'll definitely check that out.
I hope that someone in the chat will also enjoy that little tip and trick. And also seeing lots of thanks for the link that you shared in the chat with all the shortcuts in a really nice printable way.
I use it. I have it bookmarked. It's not even hidden in a folder. It's on my bookmark toolbar. It's my go-to, and it's just incredibly useful. I learn features sometimes I see a shortcut and I'm like, oh, what does that do? And then I learn more about the feature that way.
Do you have any secret way of actually learning all the shortcuts by heart? Or do you think that actually having like a printed version is a great way to unload your brain?
I think it depends on your learning style. There are some people that I've met in that I do make myself stay away from the mouse as much as possible, which actually when you're learning a tool is really hard and it's really frustrating, to be brutally honest. But the rewards that I get and the...
Well, I know that IntelliJ has lots of secret things and surprises ready at hand. What one specific surprise would you promise to those who will decide to switch to IntelliJ?
My day. So those are my current two favorite things in IntelliJ.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for those exciting insights, and I hope we actually brought something new to every single spectator today to switch into the IntelliJ IDEA toolkit. And for now, I'd like to introduce to everyone the next talk. It will be a talk by Olga Telezhnaya, who is a software engineer at JetBrains at Educational Tools team. And I think that you will learn a lot about all the possible applications of JetBrains tools into the educational. Many people to learn and to teach programming. And she started to program after she finished school. And then she really understands what it's like to be a continuous lifelong learning. And she'll share her experience in a second.
Hi everyone, and thank you for watching. My name is Olga. I am software engineer from JetBrains Educational Products team. I am also an avid learner and have a lot of experience using different tools, including many online platforms and code forces as well. Today we will talk about educational products here at JetBrains and how they can be useful with various learning scenarios. I will talk to you today about learning in general and also discuss a little bit more about competitive programming opportunities. You can ask me any questions you have in the chat. Vendors, schools, colleges, and universities. We have partnership programs with many educational institutions. And since 2015, we have been developing educational products that help people with learning and teaching programming. We have several educational products. JetBrains Academy is a project-based learning platform where you can learn and practice programming. We will talk about it more later. We also have our educational IDEs, PyCharm Educational and IntelliJ IDEA Educational Editions. There is also the EduTools plugin, which brings the educational features to our other IDEs as well. The mission of my team is to simplify the process of developments for those who has just started, so that everyone can use professional tools from the very start of their journey to becoming a software engineers. All our educational products have one thing in common: a learning by doing, hands-on approach. Here is what we will cover today. We will start with our tools for competitive programming and our code forces integration. Then we'll have a look on our general approach on how to learn programming more efficiently. We will also cover our tools for educators. At the end, we will discuss the possible ways to collaborate with each other. So, the main topic of today's talk is competitive programming. To be honest, I'm the biggest fan of code forces support in EduTools plugin, and I developed this subsystem as my daily job. So I'm really glad to talk about code forces integration today. Just to be sure that everyone is on the same page, Code Forces is an online platform for programming competition and contests. It's also a rapidly growing community for people who love competitive programming. It's a site with competitions which happen about twice a week. Everyone can register and take part. You can choose your programming language of choice, solve tasks, and then send your solution to the server. Code Forces has its own automated checking system, so you will be informed whether your solution is correct or not. I'm happy to say that you can solve the task right inside our JetBrains IDEs in any of 8 supported languages: C++, Java, Python, Kotlin, Scala, Rust, Go, and JavaScript. Let me quickly refresh the process of solving a contest on Code Forces platform. After you register on the site, you need to choose the contest. You usually have 2 or 3 hours to complete the contest, or you can go through historical contests with no time limits. That's my favorite option. Let's try and solve a task using our JetBrains IDEs, using all the perks our IDEs can provide, such as smart completion, refactoring, source code navigation, and some of other cool stuff. You could use whatever is your favorite JetBrains IDE. The Tools plugin is compatible with most of them. Click Learn and Teach and choose Start Codeforces Contest. Then we need to provide the plugin with the link or ID of the contest. Or we could choose from the list by clicking on View All Contests. Then we just need to select one. We are able to choose both the language and the programming language. List of programming languages depends on the plugin you have installed. I guess I have Python plugin on my CLion IDE, but let's go with C++. The last step before we start, we could check the list of the tasks. This is how it looks. Let me introduce you to some of the things we can see. On the left part, there is the heart of the IDE, the code editor. It usually takes up a little bit more space. I made the other section bigger to make it easier to see everything. Here you can write your own solution for the task. Our smart code editor helps you to work efficiently by providing lots of smart features. At the bottom, you can see all the tasks from the contest. Each task has an executable file and test set that were provided by contest authors. You can also add your own test sets and check your solution on them. On the right side of the screen, you can see the task description. It's absolutely the same with this section at Codeforces platform. You may already be familiar with this structure. Finally, under the task description, we have 3 useful buttons. Let's try each of them. I wrote the code and clicked the Run Local Test button. Unfortunately, my solution is wrong. The plugin showed me that expected differs from actual. We also have a new button there, Compare Outputs. Let's click it. This view could be very useful when you are searching for small bugs in your solution and when the output is big. Let's return to bottom right menu. When your solution is ready, just click Copy and Submit. You don't need to copy-paste the solution, it's done by the IDE. You will be redirected to the Codeforces site, where you just need to select the task and paste the solution from the clipboard. And you're all set! To sum up, Codeforces support in JetBrains IDEs gives you the smooth experience of using professional tools with code completion debugging and all other features, while you take part in contests on your favorite competitive programming site. Our next topic is general approach to learning. At JetBrains, we are passionate about continuous improvement. We hold learning in the highest regard. We are inspired to support those who never stop learning and who help others get better at programming. I am happy to introduce you to JetBrains Academy. It's a project-based learning platform with single concept topics, interactive challenges, and integration with development tools. What does it mean? We believe you will also work with popular frameworks and different development approaches. At the end of the language track, you will have completed several projects. The knowledge that you will have by the end of this process could help you to apply to junior developer positions. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the process of learning itself. Right after choosing the programming language, we suggest you to start with a recommended project or select one according to the level of difficulty you are comfortable with. You can also decide on the project using the user reviews, the time it takes, the number of topics it contains, or just pick a project that piques your interest. Or you can get a detailed project description with a number of ratings provided by our learners who have successfully completed the project. The rating categories are usefulness, clarity, and fun. After selecting a project, you can explore the project structure. Each project is split into stages. You start with a simple working version of your app and then develop more and more advanced version with every stage. On each stage, you go through the list of topics to learn for all the concepts you need on this iteration. But what are the topics? Each topic focuses on explaining one concept using multiple code examples. Topics will usually take around 15 minutes to complete. You will get the concept theory with multiple code examples that explain it. And then you can check and practice your new knowledge with quizzes and code challenges. You can solve programming assignments from the platform in the online code editor, or you can use an IntelliJ IDE, PyCharm IDE, or Ultimate or Community IDE with EduTools plugin installed. This plugin provides all the educational functionality in your favorite JetBrains IDE. After clicking the Solve in IDE button on the JetBrains Academy platform, you will be redirected to your IDE with the code challenge opened. As you can see, you have the code editor, project view, task window with the platform. We also think that learning to use professional tools is as crucial as the languages and technologies. We encourage everyone to implement the project stages in the IDE and even force it for the stages that need more than one file to work with. With one file, there is a choice. Use code editor in the browser or the IDE. And again, with the help of the smart IDE features, you can solve the task and verify your solution. Please also have a look at the bottom of the task description window, where you can see the link that says Pick Solution. Click on it and you will be redirected back to the JetBrains Academy platform to a place where you can look at other solutions to this problem, discuss them with other students, give advice, and get help. We believe that being a part of a community and learning together is a very important thing in a learning process. When talking about development tools, we also include build tools, version control systems, and other tools. We have dedicated topics to help set up the environment, and when the project is finished, it can be uploaded to GitHub. Every project you do is an excellent addition to your portfolio. The best resume you can have as a developer is an active GitHub account. On GitHub, there are a lot of profiles with projects from JetBrains Academy. For example, this one from an amazing student who has completed a number of JetBrains Academy projects and built up a great portfolio already. Let's talk about the next section of our talk, practice. If you have some previous experience and you want to fill in some of the gaps, you can get a bird's eye view of where you are at with your learning and choose what you want to learn and practice. If you know which concept you want to learn about, it's a good idea to switch to advanced search. The cheat sheets are helpful for finding what you're looking for, like regular expressions, a topic that you should revise again and again. You can read through the theory or skip it, but it's always a good idea to solve some of the challenges. It will not only help you to refresh your knowledge, but it will also help you to better understand your knowledge gaps. And if you realize you need to dig into it, JetBrains Academy will help you keep focused on what you need to learn. You can always revise the list of prerequisite topics and switch to them if needed. When learning and switching from one interesting topic to the next, it's so easy to lose track of your learning journey. Realizing your progress and reflecting on your own goals can be a big motivation to keep going, and is one of the most important aspects of the learning process. So we created a knowledge map that will show your progress and help you choose the next step. If you want to practice your algorithm skills, you might be especially interested in our special algorithm part of knowledge map that covers many important themes such as data structures, dynamic programming, algorithm on graphs, and so on. Each topic has dependencies on other things, and you could choose the order of learning topics by yourself, making your learning experience unique. Table view with visualization of your progress can be very motivating during the learning process. Our next session is for educators in the broadest sense of the word. If you are a teacher or a professional developer or just someone who wants to share your knowledge with your friends or classmates, our educational products can help you create your own educational content and transfer your programming skills in the form of code practice tasks and integrated tests. The EduTools plugin is a professional tool to help both learn and teach programming. It brings the learning by doing approach to teachers, students, and everyone from the community. Let's take a look at one of examples, Apache Beam Catus. We can choose it from the list and open it in the IDE. As in Codeforces integration, you can see a list of the lessons and tasks. Each task has an assignment description and task code in the editor that students need to complete with their code. Inspired by a BM Catus course, we can now create our own. Every course created with EduTools plugin is structured as a list of lessons. Each lesson contains tasks of one of 5 different types. We are going to create a code challenge validated by tests. The task was created, including a description, a file with the exercise code, and the test file to check the solutions. You can also add any other files the student may need to complete the task. We are going to teach with the help of simple and effective fill in the missing code exercises. So we will need to prepare exercise code and add an answer placeholder. Now we can add a task description with some useful hints using HTML or Markdown. The most important step is writing our custom test to automatically verify the student's solution when they click the check button. So we create a Hello Java test for our code challenge and run it to make sure everything works as intended. When we are ready with our task, we can review it and adjust the course information, which is conveniently stored in YAML format. If we are done with the course, it's a good idea to view it from a student's perspective and test it. This is how our small demo course looks. After everything has been tested and verified, we can share our course publicly on the Stepic online learning platform, or we could share it privately with an archive file. After publishing, you can track the progress of your learners, know where they get stuck, or check their solutions. You can also edit your course so the students have more comprehensible task descriptions and reliable tests. This was a very short demo on how to create your own course and share your knowledge with the community. But I hope it demonstrated how simple it is to do. Last but not least, we always appreciate contributions and new ideas from the community. By contributing to JetBrains Academy, you have a real opportunity to shape the learning experience not only for yourself, but hundreds of thousands of our users. Explaining the topics, creating a project, or even submitting an idea can help you see the same subject from a different angle. The easiest way to show your support is by helping other community members. Answer other users' questions, post useful links and hints, and submit solutions. Get exclusive first access to the new content, give us feedback, and improve the learning experience not only for yourself, but for thousands of other users. Let us know which topics you'd like to see expanded or added. New project ideas are also welcome. Tell us what you would be interested to working on. Learn all about our content creating process and shape the learning experience for thousands of our users by creating topics and projects for JetBrains Academy. And we are also happy to see your contribution in our EduTools plugin. It's free and open source. We are always happy to reward our active contributors. You can receive gems, virtual points that you can spend on the platform. We are always excited to have new people to join our community. If you are interested in contributing to our educational products, please email us at academy@jetbrains.com. You can find more information on our website. If you want to start teaching or contributing, please follow the Start Guide, email us, or drop a message in our Twitter. We have also prepared a small gift for everyone here. Please follow the special link, register on JetBrains Academy, and get 3 months for free to try it. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask them now. I will be more than happy to answer them.
Hi, Olga. Great to have you here today.
Hi, thank you.
I'm really happy to say that I know Olga for quite some time, and it's always been a pleasure to talk together and to actually discuss educational processes in software engineering. I think Olga really knows it all. So if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in chat now. And we're also live on both YouTube and Facebook, so you can ask questions in Facebook chat as well, which is exciting. And I really have that very standard and straightforward question. I studied software engineering myself, and you actually listed so many different and very difficult, in my opinions, platforms and courses and integration with all the JetBrains tools and IDEs. how do I start all of that at once? Where do I actually go if I want to just start easy?
Okay, so it's a good idea to choose only one product to start from. And if you don't know which one to choose, I really suggest you JetBrains Academy. I really like their approach, this project-based approach. It helps you to bring your motivation, and it's super cool to show your friends that you have a really working application and you could use it in your real day life maybe.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that JetBrains Academy works best for adults? Or if you're even like a high school student, that can work for you nicely?
I think the content there is really awesome. It's good both for children and adults. The projects, they have really different topics, so you could choose anything that you're interested in. So yeah, it's used for everyone.
Wow, that's awesome. And as always, this stream is also dedicated to the JetBrains ICPC partnership. So what do you think about competitive programming for beginners? Does that fit into that learning curve that you think works best?
I think that competitive programming is real fun, and I really should suggest to try it to everyone. I guess 2 months of practicing any programming language would be enough. And I'm glad to say that our EduTools plugin will set everything up for you, so you don't need to think about any configuration issues. I started programming 8 years ago, and I really I wish I had something like that 8 years ago.
Wow, that's exciting. What would you recommend to those who are just starting together? What would you tell them to keep their motivation going?
So any general phrases like please never give up or something like that. To be honest, I can give you one good advice. Try to learn in groups, because when you are learning with your friends, you feel that you need to go on because your friends also are going on. So, and you need to keep this team together, and that really could help you.
Wow, that's a great advice. And I think it fits really nicely with the idea of actually working together, working as a team, working as a group that can help you solve more difficult problems faster. And it really fits nicely into both the JetBrains concept of JetBrains Academy and educational processes and the ICPC team-based competitions. Thank you so much for your time. I think that was exciting. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to post them in chat. I think Olga will be able to answer those over there as well, which is really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we are now continuing with, last but not least, talk from Ksenia Shneyveys. And Ksenia is a really experienced person who will tell us about why educators choose Kotlin as the main subject and how great that works. Ksenia conducted a huge questionnaire, and she works with a number of universities, and you will be able to get an insight from professors and students and teachers from all over the world, sharing their experience of working with Kotlin as the main programming languages, and definitely using all the exciting JetBrains tools and IDEs that are available for that. So Ksenia, word goes to you. Thank you.
Hi everyone! Welcome to this video about Kotlin in education. I'm really excited to share with you some quick facts and stats about why universities from all over the world include Kotlin in their courses and why you should consider doing so as well. I've talked to several dozen professors who teach Kotlin to find out why they have chosen the language. A majority of them identified Kotlin's concise and expressive syntax as their favorite feature, as it allows them to use less code to get more done. Now let's take a closer look at the key reasons why professors choose Kotlin. First, it's academically recognized. Over 100 top-ranking universities include Kotlin in their courses. 22 of the top 100 universities from the Times Higher Education rankings use Kotlin. The maturity of the language is backed by the fact that since 2019, Android app development has been Kotlin first. 58% of the Kotlin courses we know about are the Android app development courses that use Kotlin as a primary language. Now let's hear from the professors.
Hey everyone, my name is Rahul, and I teach the Android app development class at Stanford University, and I also teach pretty extensively on YouTube. I use Kotlin for everything I teach. I think it makes app development much faster and much easier. And given that it's 100% interoperable with Java and all the Java libraries that have been developed, I think it's a no-brainer that Kotlin is the path forward for Android.
My name is Kat Kwan, and I'm a developer advocate at Google. We create training courses to teach people how to build Android apps in Kotlin. I like teaching Kotlin because it's so concise, it helps reduce common programming mistakes, and it just makes our job as developers easier.
We have switched to Kotlin a few years ago at the App Factory from Java. The amount of code is less using Kotlin compared to Java. The UI that you can build with Kotlin is really crisp.
So now is the best time to revamp your Android app development course with Kotlin. Our handy Java to Kotlin converter makes it easy to migrate existing course materials.
Students don't need to master new syntax to learn different styles of programming. They can learn imperative, object-oriented, and functional programming all with the same language. And last but not least, they can learn asynchronous programming and master concurrency with Kotlin. Multi-threaded, multi-processor environments are not our future, they are our present, and it's really important to include this topic in the curriculum. Reactive programming, features and promises, async await, and of course coroutines, students can learn all these commonly established approaches and concepts using only one language.
In addition to its suitability for mobile app programming, Kotlin is very versatile. It's used to teach web and server-side development, algorithms and data structures, science, research, competitive programming, and more.
In algorithmic problems, like in competitive programming that I'm related to, sometimes you can just formulate what you are doing in natural language, like in English or in Russian, and then almost literally translate it word by word into Kotlin primitives to receive a one-line chain of Kotlin standard library methods that is doing just exactly what you want it to do, and it's easy to read and to understand and easy to maintain later, so it's just as comfortable as it can be.
Here at UFMG we use Kotlin for a number of things. In particular, I use it for teaching. I like to teach object-oriented programming. We also use Kotlin for research projects. For instance, we are using it right now to design a domain-specific language called Z.
I am teaching Kotlin at Moscow Institute for Physics and Technology, and I'm also developing a lot of scientific application in Kotlin, in different flavors of Kotlin, including Kotlin JVM and Kotlin front-end and JavaScript.
Kotlin is used by many businesses and organizations of all sizes. More than 5.8 million people have edited Kotlin code in the past 12 months. 70% of the top 1,000 apps in the Play Store use Kotlin. Kotlin is the fourth fastest growing programming language in the world. It's the fourth most loved programming language, and the number of job postings for Kotlin is rapidly increasing. I conducted a survey of Kotlin instructors and found out that feedback from the majority of their students is either positive or really positive. Students are happy about producing useful software quickly and about programming in a language they'll use later in their career.
I like teaching Kotlin because students get just as excited about it as I do. Most of my students have a background in Java, knowledge which they can make use of when learning Kotlin. They quickly pick up on how safe, concise, well-supported, and enjoyable to use the language is.
What my students like most are different, very fun operators. For example, Elvis operator, which are just a syntactic sugar, but very convenient and fun.
The experience has been very positive. The students give great feedback after using Kotlin.
Students find Kotlin to be a well-balanced and wisely designed language and adopt it as their main one, also using it for solving educational problems and scientific research.
I really like to teach Kotlin because I think it's really fun to work with it, and I think it's also really great to share that fun with the students, especially when I get to see their faces and they go like, "Oh, what? You can do that?"
Regardless of whether your students are learning their first programming language or are already familiar with Java or Python, they'll feel at home in Kotlin.
Kotlin is a great choice for learning programming from scratch. In Java, the first Hello World program throws so many non-trivial concepts at you. Main is a static function that takes an array of program arguments. It uses the long confusing systemout.println call, and it should be defined in a class. There is a whole bunch of overwhelming things for a total newcomer. In Kotlin, it's one function without arguments that only uses println. It's the first impression that students are going to have of programming and could define whether it becomes a positive experience after all. With Kotlin, learners can straight away focus on the things that matter.
For me, the most important thing is that Kotlin's design is opinionated and yet open-minded. Opinionated because it does have some constructs that simplify certain kinds of solutions. But still, it is open-minded because it doesn't force you to those constructs. And that is very important for us at an entry-level programming language. And that's why we chose it.
As we go through the different language features and the design decisions behind them, I also get to explain a lot of general ideas and best practices about programming.
I also think that Kotlin is a good first language to learn because it's a modern language and it allows you to actually build applications in different fields without learning different languages.
It's also easy to get started. We point students to the Kotlin playground so they can start coding in Kotlin and trying it out right away without even needing to install an IDE. And I think this helps give them a quick win up front.
Seamless interoperability with the JVM ecosystem means that Kotlin can rely on a wealth of tried and true libraries and frameworks. Kotlin programs can call Java code without requiring any extra work, and vice versa. By leveraging Kotlin's multi-platform projects, students can create applications that target both iOS and Android mobile platforms, as well as web, desktop, server, all with the same language.
This year we also covered Kotlin multi-platform, which significantly broadens its application area, making it a developer's Swiss knife.
Kotlin promotes writing correct programs with static type checking and automatic memory management.
Kotlin helps reduce common programming errors, so errors get caught at compile time as opposed to later during runtime. This is beneficial for beginners because it can help guide them into writing safer code up front.
At the same time, language provides you good combination of null safety and strong typing. These two features will protect newbies from the most typical mistakes.
Kotlin's syntactic simplicity makes it beginner-friendly, while at the same time it offers sophisticated features that ambitious students won't grow out of.
When we start getting into more complex programming concepts, we're able to convey our point using less lines of code because Kotlin is so concise. And I think this helps students understand better because there's less boilerplate code.
Kotlin has a very concise code style. This makes it good for discussing algorithms and programming ideas with my students.
Conceptually, it's much easier to communicate something in Kotlin because you don't have as much verbosity or confusing syntax compared to Java.
Many of the leading tools in the industry come bundled with Kotlin. IntelliJ IDEA and Android Studio support Kotlin as a first-class citizen. IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate Edition is free for educators and students.
Kotlin tooling is another key point. Using IntelliJ and Educational Tools plugin, we managed to significantly enhance our effectiveness, covering more topics within our course, focusing on Kotlin.
We should show students that contemporary programming is not just writing the code in the text file, despite it being a good exercise, but rather a bundle, a programming language and the accompanying IDE functionality. And Kotlin is great for this purpose. Students can learn it and get used to seeing their IDE experience as an inseparable part of the whole programming experience. If you'd like some inspiration for creating your own courses, you can check out the Kotlin for Java Developers course on Coursera, as well as the course that accompanies the Atomic Kotlin book and covers the fundamentals of the language. You may also want to check out the EduTools plugin. You can create your own courses there and share them with your students.
Open source at heart, Kotlin is a free language that is supported by and evolves with the help of its diverse and dynamic community. We've created a dedicated Slack channel where you can share your experience, exchange your ideas, and help us make Kotlin for education better.
It's been really a great journey working with Kotlin.
I'm on board 100%. My students really enjoy it. I think Kotlin is a really great tool for education.
So, Kotlin team, great work. Thank you very much.
I'd like to sincerely thank all the professors, in particular for the input they've provided for this video, and for spreading the word out about Kotlin. And thank you all so much for your participation. Let's teach Kotlin.
And here I am now today together with Ksenia. Ksenia, thank you so much for tuning in. How are you?
Hi, Lydia. Thanks so much. What an exciting event it is.
Yeah,
I hope
indeed.
you all enjoyed it despite the technical issues we've been experiencing with the YouTube broadcast. I surely did enjoy the event.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting us to make that huge event. And I think it was a huge success and everyone learned something new. And talking about learning, Kotlin is such a young language. And you know that usually academia is widely accepted to be very conservative, let's put it this way. What is the current status of Kotlin in academia? Is it widely accepted already?
So yeah, when I joined JetBrains about a year ago, I decided to find out how much Kotlin was already taught. So I started looking at the top universities of the world, and I was really happy to find out that Kotlin was taught there already, despite that it's a relatively new language. And I connected with the educators who already taught Kotlin, and I wanted to find out why they have chosen the language, why they liked it. And in the video with the testimonials, the answers from the professors who use it for various computer science subjects and research and competitive programming. So I found out that at least 22 of the top 100 universities of the Times Higher Education rankings already teach Kotlin, and there are over 100 courses. And also Google has adopted Kotlin as an Android-first language. So Google is also driving Kotlin's popularity in academia, and they've created a lot of courses and resources for teaching Android in Kotlin. And these are the most popular Kotlin courses right now. 58% of the Kotlin courses we know about are the Android app development courses. Google has also resources, free open resources for self-learning and some trainings for the educators and community members. And our developer advocates are also now working on creating a webinar training program for the educators who would like to start teaching Kotlin. If you are interested in having such a webinar organized at your university, please reach out to me. My email is chaos@jetbrains.com. I'll post it later in the chat. And yeah, we'd be happy to share the Kotlin program for educators with you.
Indeed, I think that Kotlin is a great language to include into virtually every curricular because it's very diverse. You can do so many different things with Kotlin. Well, obviously, as it was already mentioned by Misha Dvorkin, it's very easy to use Kotlin instead of C++ in an example of competitive programming, and so you can learn all the algorithms and data structures. But at the same time, you can actually teach something really practical as Android development, really state-of-the-art, actually give the professional knowledge that will come handy in virtually any software engineering company in the world. And it will be just the same tool, just the same IDE, just the same language. And I think that's exciting, and I'm not sure if there is any other language in the world that can actually brag that it's that diverse and it can be applied in so many different areas. So I think that that's really exciting. And Olga mentioned some of the resources, general educational resources, not just for Kotlin. Is there something special that you can recommend for those who want to start specifically with that language?
Sure. So based on the interviews with the Kotlin instructors and based on some research papers that I studied about the factors that influence the programming language choice in universities, I created a dedicated page for Kotlin educators, kotlinlang.org/education. And I'll also share this link in the chat. And so if you are thinking about using Kotlin for your course, please visit the page to read about the key advantages of Kotlin for teaching computer science and other subjects. And this just might help you make your decision. And on this page, there's also an interactive map showing all the universities that currently teach Kotlin with the links to the courses. And some of the universities provide very extensive information, including the slides and assignments and course program. Link to join the education channel of our large community, Kotlin Lang Slack workspace. In the Slack community, we have over 30,000 people communicating about Kotlin. The educators community is pretty small and private at the moment. It's a little bit over 100 people, but that's a great place for educators where they exchange their experiences about teaching Kotlin. And I post some educational updates and news from the Kotlin team there. Also, at the bottom of this kotlinlang.org/education page, there is an extensive list of resources, everything you might need to get started with Kotlin. Links to the relevant reference documentation, links to the free educational licenses to IDEs that we've mentioned today, educational plugin links, also recommended books and online courses, Java to Kotlin converter, playground with cones and examples, a section on Android and Kotlin resources, and link to our community groups. And another great way to learn Kotlin, to practice this modern language, is taking part in a Kotlin coding contest. And my colleagues have previously mentioned Kotlin Heroes a couple of times today, and you are very welcome to join the upcoming Kotlin Heroes that is on November 12th on the Codeforces platform.
Wow, that sounds great. I think that now we know a lot of resources for every single educator to actually include Kotlin into their curricula. Thank you very much, Ksenia. I'm sure you will get a lot of friend requests over all the social networks, and your email will get a lot of more invitations from you and future teachers to teach Kotlin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lydia. You're a great host.
I indeed want to remind you about the fact that we have a link to educational licenses from JetBrains that you can use as soon as you confirm your educational account. And also, we have a single place for all the things together, the JetBrains for ICPC webpage. You can also access it by the link jetbrains.com/ICPC. Make sure to visit it and you'll get all the necessary information about JetBrains involvement into ICPC, great tools that allow you to build all the new skills that will be useful in both ICPC competition and software engineering in general. And definitely tune into the Kotlin Heroes 5, the ICPC round. I definitely will. Thank you so much for tuning in into today's broadcast. It was indeed a treat, and I hope to see you soon on the future ICPC and JetBrains events. Have a great day.